Walker Stapleton and Jared Polis complete their debate schedule in just a few days as ballots begin to arrive around the state. A recent Magellan Strategies poll shows Polis with a 7-point lead with 9% reporting undecided. Patty, we've been talking about the governor's race because it is the biggest race right now for the election. But when it comes to polling, these numbers haven't changed from the same polling group doing this poll a month ago. Are you surprised the debate season hasn't changed or wiggled those polls at all?
Well, it might have, because what it's done is it cut down the number of undecided. When we first heard about the poll, it was maybe a third undecided. Now we're down to, what, 9%? So you've seen people have made decisions, whether watching these increasingly odd debates has affected people or not. They seem to be breaking the way people were already breaking before. You know, on the most recent one, Stapleton just looks like he's not ready for prime time in some cases. And the fight to bring up the Polis case in Boulder, we dissected that at Westward with an employee, and the police were called. To bring that up the way he has, and there's a bad commercial on it that's been pulled from 2 different stations. I could be wrong, but I haven't heard Polis bringing up the DUI that Stapleton had before. I would like to stick to the issues and get away from the innuendo, but watching them up there has been interesting because you get a feel for who might at least be able to handle crowds as the governor, or questions, difficult questions as the governor. That doesn't mean they will hold the policy they're talking about at the debates, but I think it's helped people make some decisions.
David, are we seeing, I mean, if Walker Stapleton sees internal polling and he's behind, I think we predicted here, I think Ed Seelever came in for the first results of debate that he had hosted that morning and said, hey, he's aggressive, that probably shows he's behind in polls. But have we seen Walker Stapleton talk about himself enough in difference to always going to what Jared Polis will do and not telling enough about what Walker Stapleton will do?
I can't remember in my lifetime, I was born in 1960, when we've had a governor's race where the 2 major candidates were both so unpopular with the public. And so since the public in general doesn't lend, and I've heard this, you know, from canvassers and things like that, you go door to door, you may be able to pick up a vote by going door to door, but a common reaction is, I hate all these negative ads, I don't like either of them. So Stapleton not trying to talk about himself is probably a positive move. One of the things that's surprising is Stapleton has not been able to take advantage of things where Jared's leading issues are so radically out of step with Colorado. Jared wants a government takeover of all health care. So, you know, the choice exists in a kind of a phony system. You can go to this doctor or that doctor technically, but it's all going to be paid for by the state. Gigantic tax increase to do it. And of course, we'll end up with a situation like Canada or England is, yeah, you can get a primary care appointment fairly readily. And if you want the hip replacement you need today, you can go wait in line for 9 months if you're ever going to get it. That was rejected by about 80% of the Colorado voters when it was on the ballot. And Jared wants to cram that down on Colorado again. You would think that could be a pretty good issue for Polis. I'm with the 80%. They're both nominally against the 112, the oil and gas fracking ban, because it has a 2,500-foot set-out back, which would wipe out the oil and gas industry. But Jared previously has been for a 2,000-foot setback, which would wipe out the entire industry and maybe leave a few stragglers arrive for historical museum purposes. You know, again, and that's going to go down to, I think, a pretty large defeat. And again, Stapleton can't convert people who agree with him on the issues into voting for him.
Eric, Stapleton has doubled down on the story that Patty referenced about the interaction between Polis and a coworker, and it's turned into a pretty fierce conversation from the Polis campaign, who has pushed 2 Denver stations to pull the ad. I don't know if that's a strong move. I get the being aggressive, but I do wonder, as I asked David, if people know enough about what Walker stands for, let alone, or besides, against what Jared Polis would do.
I don't know if it's a strong move, it's a desperate move. There's poll after poll after poll. Yes, Magellan is a Republican firm, discounted a little bit, but it is not out of line with other polls that are out there. To win, if you're going to go negative on your opponent, you have to have a baseline of likability on your own part. in order to capitalize on that. And I'm not convinced that Walker has projected or earned that sort of baseline of likability. This whole race, and we've talked about around this table, is just lacking any buzz. I don't think there are 100 Coloradans who would really passionately walk through a door for either of these candidates. There was more buzz around Hickenlooper and Dan Mays than there is around Jared Polis and Walker Stapleton. I think back to other governors, Republican Bill Owens, Democrat Dick Lamb, Roy Romer, Bill Ritter, Hickenlooper, obviously. There was personality, there was some magnetism. This one is all about partisanship. I don't think it's about policy particularly, and it is certainly not about personality. It is about partisanship, and we're in a likely Democratic state and a deeply Democratic year, and for my thinking, that is the whole explanation for Polis's lead and Polis's likely win here.
Brother Jeff, do Coloradans know enough about either of these candidates?
Well, I've got to follow those words, partisanship. I don't think people care. They're firmly in one camp or the other. They're not listening to facts, they're not listening to policy, and they're not listening to each other. I think this is going to be a nail biter. It's going to come down to those independents who can mobilize their base to get out and vote, because it's going to take some encouraging for people to really turn out. And I'm just not seeing that. In looking at those debates, it looked like Stapleton keeps pivoting to Trump, and they're riding that wave. And the other side, Polis and them are pulling away from that. So it's almost like Trump's in the middle. Are you for this or are you against this? And those who don't care about either side, they'll probably decide this election.